The message came at 3 in the morning when most of Earth was sleeping. It traveled across the darkness of space for over 100 years before it finally reached a listening station scattered across the solar system. Every receiver picked it up at the same moment. Every translator program turned it into the same words. Please help us. They are killing everyone. Commander Jack Holloway was drinking cold coffee in the operations center of Lunar Base Armstrong when the signal arrived. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes, but those eyes went wide when he heard the message play through the speakers. In his 40 years of service, he had never heard anything like it. The voice was not human, but the fear in it was something he understood perfectly. Where is it coming from? He asked. Lieutenant Amy Brennan checked her screens. She was young and smart, and her fingers moved quickly across the controls. A planet called Kepler 442b, sir. It is about 112 light-years away from us. This message was sent over a century ago. Jack set down his coffee cup. 112 years. Whatever terrible thing had made those aliens cry for help had happened long before he was even born. But the signal was still playing, which meant someone had kept it running all this time. Someone was still hoping that help would come. Within hours, the message had spread to every government on Earth. Leaders gathered in emergency meetings. Scientists studied the signal looking for clues. Military commanders started making plans. And ordinary people watched their screens with a mixture of fear and wonder. Not everyone agreed on what to do. Some politicians said it was too dangerous to respond. They said humanity did not know what was out there, and that answering the call could bring destruction to Earth. Others said the distance was too far and the cost too high. Why should humans risk their lives for aliens they had never met? But there were also those who heard something else in that desperate plea. They heard an opportunity. For the first time in history, humanity could be more than just survivors struggling on a small blue planet. They could be heroes. Admiral Patricia Vance was 70 years old, but she still stood straight and spoke with a voice that made people listen. She had commanded warships and won battles that most people only read about in history books. Her soldiers called her Iron Patty because nothing seemed to break her dot. She addressed the global assembly on the third day after the signal arrived. The great hall was filled with representatives from every nation, all of them arguing and worried. Patricia waited until they grew quiet before she spoke. We have spent our entire existence as a species wondering if we are alone, she said. Now we know the answer. We are not alone. And the first message we receive from the stars is not a threat or a demand. It is a cry for help. She paused and looked around the room. The question we must answer is simple. What kind of people do we want to be? Do we hide behind our sun and pretend we heard nothing? Or do we answer? The debate went on for 2 more days. Voices were raised. Fists were pounded on tables. Some delegates walked out in anger. But in the end, when the votes were counted, humanity made its choice. They would answer the call. The problem was getting there. Even with the fastest ships humanity had ever built, the journey to Kepler 442b would take almost 3 years. 3 years of traveling through empty space with no way to turn back. 3 years with no idea what was waiting at the end. The military wanted to send trained soldiers. Scientists wanted to send researchers who could study the aliens and learn from them. Diplomats wanted to send people who could talk and make peace. But Admiral Vance knew that none of these people were right for this mission. This was not a normal mission. This was a rescue operation into completely unknown territory. They would be facing an enemy they knew nothing about, with no backup and no way to call for help. They needed people who could handle impossible situations. They needed people who were not afraid of anything. They needed the most dangerous humans on Earth. Patricia traveled to a place that did not exist on any map. It was buried deep under the Rocky Mountains. hidden behind doors that could survive a nuclear explosion. The guards who worked there never spoke about their jobs, not even to their families. The facility had no official name, only a code. Black Vault 7. This was where humanity kept its monsters. The prisoners in Black Vault 7 were not ordinary criminals. They were men and women who had been changed, enhanced, and trained to be living weapons. The government had created them during dark times when the world had faced threats too terrible for normal soldiers to handle. They had served their purpose. And then they had been locked away because they were too dangerous to let free. Patricia walked through the corridors of the prison with Director Samuel Lane. The prisoners watched her through thick glass walls. Their eyes followed her every step like wolves watching a deer. "You want to release them," Samuel said. He did not sound surprised. He had been expecting something like this since the alien signal arrived. "I want to give them a choice," Patricia replied. "They can stay here and rot until they die. Or they can come with us, help save an entire alien species, and earn full pardons for everything they have done." Samuel shook his head slowly. "These people are not heroes, Admiral. They are killers. The best killers humanity has ever produced. What makes you think they will help anyone?" Patricia stopped in front of one cell. Inside, a woman was exercising, doing push-ups with perfect form. Her name was Nicole Gray, but everyone who knew about her called her the Widow. The rumor said she had once killed 12 enemy soldiers with her bare hands. The rumor said she had escaped from 3 different maximum security prisons. The rumor said she was not entirely human anymore. "I think they will help," Patricia said, watching Nicole through the glass, "because they are tired of being monsters. We made them into weapons because we needed weapons. Now the universe is giving them a chance to be something else." Nicole stopped her exercises and looked up. Her eyes met Patricia's through the glass. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, Nicole smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just been offered a hunt. But it was also the smile of someone who had been given hope for the first time in years. The cells of Black Vault 7 held 15 prisoners when Admiral Patricia Vance arrived with her offer. Each one of them had a story that would give normal people nightmares. Each one of them had been built to do terrible things. And each one of them had spent years locked in a concrete box, waiting to die. Nicole Gray was the first to accept. She sat across from Patricia in a small room with no windows and listened to the offer without showing any emotion on her face. When Patricia finished speaking, Nicole was quiet for almost a minute. "Why me?" she finally asked. "Why any of us? You have thousands of soldiers, trained military, people who follow orders." Patricia leaned forward. "Because those soldiers will hesitate when they see something they do not understand. They will freeze when the situation goes wrong. They will break when the pressure becomes too much." She paused. "You will not. None of you will. That is why you are here. That is why we made you." Nicole laughed. It was a cold sound with no happiness in it. "You made us and then you threw us away. Now you need us again." "Yes," Patricia said simply. "I am not going to lie to you. We need monsters. And you are the best monsters we have." Nicole was quiet again. She looked at her hands, at the scars that covered her fingers and knuckles. Then she looked up. "Full pardon? Everything erased?" "Everything. You walk away with a clean record and enough money to start over anywhere you want. And if I die out there, then you die doing something that matters. Something good. Is that not better than dying in here, forgotten?" Nicole thought about that. She thought about 15 years of darkness and silence. She thought about all the things she had done that she could never undo. And she thought about the alien voice in that message, crying out across 100 light years of empty space, hoping that someone would hear. "I will do it," she said. One by one, the other prisoners made the same choice. Danny Russo agreed within seconds. He was a man whose brain had been rewired so that he could not feel fear. The doctors had thought this would make him the perfect soldier. Instead, it had made him reckless and almost impossible to control. In Black Vault 7, he had spent his days staring at the walls, bored out of his mind. The chance to fight something, anything, made his eyes light up like a child on Christmas morning. Megan Price took longer to decide. She was a small woman with short dark hair and eyes that seemed to look through people instead of at them. Her body contained implants that allowed her to bend light around herself, becoming invisible to both eyes and machines. She had been a spy before she was a prisoner, and she still thought like one. "What is the catch?" she asked Patricia. "There is always a catch. The catch is that you might not come back. The catch is that we have no idea what we are facing. The catch is that this could be a trap, a suicide mission, or both." Megan smiled. It was the first real smile she had shown in years. Finally, someone who tells the truth. Kyle Dunn did not say anything at all. He was a huge man, nearly 7 feet tall, with bones that had been replaced by metal alloys that made him almost impossible to hurt. He listened to Patricia's offer, nodded once, and went back to his cell to wait. That was enough. By the end of the week, 12 prisoners had accepted the mission. 3 refused. They said they would rather die in prison than trust the government again. Patricia did not argue with them. She understood. The ship chosen for the mission was called the Valor. It was the most advanced vessel humanity had ever built, designed for long journeys far beyond any human colony. It carried weapons that had never been tested in real combat. It had engines that could push it faster than light. And it had room for a crew of nearly 50 people. Lieutenant Commander Greg Porter was put in charge of the regular crew. He was a Navy man, the son of a Navy man with 20 years of service and a chest full of medals. When he learned that he would be serving alongside the Black Vault prisoners, he did not complain. He simply made a list of everything he would need to keep them under control. The list was very long. The crew of the Valor gathered for the first time 3 days before launch. The regular military personnel stood on one side of the cargo bay. The prisoners stood on the other. Between them was a gap of about 20 feet that felt much wider. Greg watched Nicole Gray study his soldiers with the cold calculation of a general planning a battle. He watched Danny Russo bounce on his heels like a boxer waiting for the bell. He watched Megan Price fade slightly into the shadows, even though she was standing in full light. These were not people he would ever have chosen to serve with. But Admiral Vance had made the decision, and Greg was a man who followed orders. "We have 3 years ahead of us," he told the assembled crew. 3 years in a metal box flying through empty space. Some of you are soldiers. Some of you are something else. But for the next 3 years, we are all crew. We eat together. We train together. We survive together. He paused and looked directly at Nicole. She looked back without flinching. "I do not care what any of you have done before," Greg continued. "I do not care what you are capable of. All I care about is completing this mission and bringing everyone home alive. If you can help with that, we will get along fine. If you cannot, we are going to have problems." Nicole smiled. It was the same cold smile she had shown Patricia in the prison. But this time, there was something else in it. Respect, maybe. Or at least curiosity. "We will see," she said. The Vala launched on a Tuesday morning with the whole world watching. Millions of people stood outside to see the flash of light as the ship left Earth orbit. Millions more watched on screens, holding their breath as humanity took its first step toward answering a call from the stars. One knew if they would ever see the crew again. But everyone understood that something important had begun. For better or worse, humanity had made its choice. The monsters had been unleashed, and now they were flying toward the unknown, carrying the hopes of an entire planet with them. Kepler 442b was beautiful and terrible at the same time. From orbit, the crew of the Valor could see vast oceans that shimmered with deep purple light. Forests covered the land masses, glowing with soft colors that shifted and changed like living things. It was unlike anything any of them had ever imagined, but there were also scars. Massive craters dotted the largest continent. Entire regions lay blackened and dead. And in the center of what had once been a great city, the distress signal still called out across the void, begging for help that had taken more than a century to arrive. "The signal is coming from there," Lieutenant Amy Brennan reported, pointing at a structure on her screen. Some kind of central building. There are heat signatures around it. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Life signs? Greg Porter asked. Faint but present. They are clustered together in the lower levels of the ruins. Hiding, probably. Nicole Gray studied the tactical display with cold, calculating eyes. She had seen battlefields before. She knew how to read the stories that destruction told. The patterns of damage, the placement of the craters, the way the buildings had fallen. This was not a natural disaster. This was war. "There is something else," she said, pointing at a series of thermal readings deep underground. "These signatures are different, bigger, and they are not with the others." Dr. Linda Walsh leaned in for a closer look. "What are they?" "I do not know. But whatever they are waiting." Greg made the call to send a landing team to the surface. 20 people would go down, including 6 of the Black Vault operatives. The rest would stay aboard the Valor, ready to provide support or evacuation if things went wrong. The landing craft touched down 3 kilometers from the ruined city. The air was thin but breathable. The gravity was heavier than Earth, pulling at their bodies with unfamiliar weight. Strange sounds came from the glowing forests around them, calls and cries from creatures no human had ever seen. Danny Russo was first out of the craft, his enhanced senses scanning for threats. Kyle Dunn followed, his massive frame moving with surprising grace. Megan Price faded into the shadows almost immediately. Scouting ahead where no one could see her, Nicole led the main team toward the city. They moved slowly and carefully through streets filled with rubble and debris. Every building they passed showed signs of violence. Walls had been torn open. Towers had been smashed. And everywhere there were marks that looked like giant claw scratches gouged into stone and metal. "Whatever did this was big," Danny said quietly. "Really big." "Stay focused," Nicole replied. "We are not here to study them. We are here to rescue survivors." They found the first aliens 20 minutes into the city. The creatures were small, barely reaching the chest of an average human. Their bodies were thin and light, built for a world where flight was natural. Large wings hung from their backs, though most of the wings they saw were damaged or broken. Their eyes were huge and made of many parts, like insect eyes, reflecting light in strange patterns. The aliens cowered when they saw the humans approaching. Some of them cried out in high, thin voices. Others tried to run on legs too weak to carry them far. Nicole stopped and raised her hands, showing she held no weapons. "We are not going to hurt you," she said slowly. "We heard your signal. We came to help." The translation software in her helmet struggled with the alien language, but after a few moments, a voice emerged from the leader of the group. It was reedy and shaking, filled with fear and disbelief. "You came. You actually came." Nicole knelt down to bring herself closer to their level. "Yes, we came as fast as we could." "How many of you are there?" 412. "All that remains of our world." The alien's voice broke with grief. Once we were millions. Now we are all that is left. Dr. Walsh pushed forward, her medical scanner already in her hands. Are you injured? Do you need help? The alien looked at her with those strange, beautiful eyes. We need more than medicine. We need to leave this place. The Devourers sleep now, but they will wake soon. They always wake when they sense new life. And when they wake, they will come for you as they came for us. As if the universe had heard the warning and decided to confirm it, the ground beneath their feet began to shake. A low rumble rose from deep underground, growing louder with each passing second. The aliens began to scream. They sense you, the leader cried. Your warmth. Your energy. They are waking. Nicole did not waste time with questions. Everyone back to the landing craft. Now, bring the survivors with you. The crew moved instantly, picking up the smaller aliens and supporting those who could walk. But the shaking grew worse with every step. Cracks appeared in the ground. Buildings that had stood for a century began to crumble. And then the first devourer emerged. It came up through the street like a nightmare rising from hell. Its body was covered in hard black shell, like armor made of shadow. Its head had no eyes that Nicole could see, but it turned toward them immediately, sensing their presence. Its mouth opened to reveal rows of teeth that gleamed like obsidian knives. The creature was the size of a truck. And it was not alone. More devourers burst from the ground around them. Some were smaller, the size of dogs. Others were much larger. They moved with terrible speed and coordination, surrounding the humans and aliens in a tightening circle. Open fire, Nicole commanded. The crew's weapons lit up the ruined street with energy and flame. The smaller devourers fell, but the larger ones barely seemed to notice. They shrugged off hits that would have destroyed armored vehicles and kept coming. Danny Russo charged into the swarm with a roar, his body moving so fast he was almost a blur. Kyle Dunn picked up a piece of fallen building and used it as a club, smashing creatures aside with each swing. Megan Price appeared and disappeared, striking from shadows and vanishing before the devourers could react. But there were so many of them. For everyone that fell, 2 more emerged from the ground. They were endless, hungry, and they would not stop until they had consumed everything. Nicole fought with cold precision, her enhanced body pushing beyond what any normal human could achieve. But even she could see the truth. They could not win this battle. Not here. Not like this. Fall back, she ordered through the comm system. Get the survivors to the ship. That is our only chance. The retreat began. It would be the longest 3 kilometers any of them had ever traveled. The first month aboard the Valor was the hardest. The regular crew stayed away from the prisoners as much as possible. They ate at different times. They exercised in different shifts. They walked on opposite sides of the corridors when they passed each other. The ship had plenty of space, but the tension made it feel small. Greg Porter spent his days watching and waiting for trouble. He expected fights. He expected violence. He expected the prisoners to turn on his crew the moment someone said the wrong thing. But the trouble never came. The prisoners kept to themselves, quiet and watchful. Like tigers in a cage. It was Nicole Gray who finally broke the wall between the 2 groups. She walked into the main eating area during the regular crew's dinner time on day 32 of the journey. Every conversation stopped. Every eye turned to watch her. She ignored them all and sat down across from Dr. Linda Walsh. The ship's chief medical officer. Linda was a small woman with kind eyes and steady hands. She had joined this mission because she wanted to help people, even alien people she had never met. Now she sat frozen with a fork halfway to her mouth, staring at one of the most dangerous humans ever created. "You are scared of me," Nicole said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Linda thought about lying. Then she decided that lying to someone like Nicole was probably a bad idea. Yes, she admitted. I am. Good. Fear keeps you alive. Nicole took a bite of her food and chewed slowly. But I am not going to hurt you. Do you want to know why? Why? Nicole set down her fork and looked around the room. Everyone was pretending not to listen, but she knew they could hear every word. Because I'm tired, she said. I spent 15 years doing terrible things. I killed people. I destroyed things. I followed orders because that was what I was made to do. And maybe some of it was necessary. Maybe I saved lives by taking lives. But I will never know for sure. She paused. Her eyes grew distant, looking at memories that no one else could see. This mission is different, she continued. Someone sent a message across the stars asking for help. They did not ask for weapons or soldiers or killers. They asked for help, and we are answering. She looked at Linda again, and something in her expression changed. It became almost human. For the first time in my life, I know I'm doing something good. I do not want to ruin that. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. Would you like some coffee? It is terrible, but it is hot. Nicole smiled back. It was a real smile this time, small and surprised. Yes, thank you. That dinner changed things aboard the Valor. It did not happen overnight, but it happened. The regular crew started seeing the prisoners as people instead of monsters. They learned that Danny Russo told bad jokes that made everyone groan. They learned that Megan Price could play chess better than anyone on the ship. They learned that Kyle Dunn, the huge silent man with metal bones, spent his free time reading poetry. And they learned that Nicole Gray, the legendary widow, was perhaps the loneliest person any of them had ever met. The months passed slowly. Faster than light travel was not like the old movies had shown. There were no stars streaking past the windows. There was only darkness, deep and endless, pressing against the hull of the ship. Some of the crew found it peaceful. Others found it terrifying. Either way, there was nothing to do but wait. Training filled most of their time. Greg Porter ran combat drills every week, preparing the crew for every situation he could imagine. The prisoners trained separately at first, but gradually the exercises merged. Regular soldiers learned techniques from enhanced killers. Enhanced killers learned discipline and teamwork from regular soldiers. Nicole trained hardest of all. She spent hours in the ship's small gym, pushing her modified body to its limits. Sometimes Greg watched her through the window, amazed at what she could do. She was faster than anyone he had ever seen. Stronger, too. But there was something else in the way she moved, something almost desperate. One night, he found her alone in the observation deck, staring out at the darkness. He stood beside her in silence for a while before speaking. You train like you are preparing to die, he said. Nicole did not look at him. Maybe I am. Is that what you want? To die out there? She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. I have been dead for 15 years, Commander. They killed the person I used to be and built something else in her place. A weapon, a tool. She touched the glass with her fingertips. But weapons do not save people. They destroy them. So either I find a way to be something more than what they made me, or I die trying. Greg thought about that. He thought about his own life, the choices he had made, the paths he had followed. You know, he said, my grandfather used to say that a person is not defined by what they are capable of. They are defined by what they choose to do with that capability. Nicole turned to look at him. Her eyes were bright in the dim light. Your grandfather sounds like a wise man. He was a drunk who worked at a gas station. But sometimes he said smart things. Nicole laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and surprised. Greg realized it was the first time he had ever heard her laugh like that. Commander, she said, I think we might actually get along. In the final weeks of the journey, the crew of the Valor became something none of them had expected. They became a team. Soldiers and prisoners, doctors and killers. All of them united by a single purpose: to answer a cry for help from the stars. When the ship finally dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, they were ready. Ready for whatever waited ahead. Ready to prove that humanity, even at its most dangerous, could choose to be heroes. The alien planet appeared on their screens like a jewel against the darkness. Purple oceans, glowing forests, and somewhere down there, people who had been waiting over 100 years for someone to save them. All crew to stations, Greg announced over the ship's speakers. His voice was calm and steady. We have arrived. Nicole stood on the bridge, watching the planet grow larger. Her hands were relaxed at her sides. Her breathing was slow and even. She was not afraid that she was ready. The retreat through the ruined city became a running battle that seemed to last forever. Devourers poured from the ground in endless waves, their bodies filling the streets like a flood of shadows. The humans fought for every meter, carrying wounded aliens and firing at anything that moved. Danny Russo was everywhere at once, his fearless brain allowing him to throw himself into situations that would have frozen any normal person. He took hits that should have killed him, staggered, and kept fighting with the wild energy of someone who had nothing to lose. Blood ran down his face from a wound he did not seem to notice. Kyle Dunn became a wall of flesh and metal, standing in gaps where the Devourers tried to break through. His modified body absorbed impacts that would have shattered stone. When a creature the size of a small car lunged at a group of fleeing aliens, he caught it with his bare hands and threw it back into the swarm. Megan Price moved through the chaos like a ghost, appearing where she was needed most and vanishing before the enemy could react. Her invisible strikes took down dozens of smaller Devourers, buying precious seconds for the others to escape. But the real battle was being fought by Nicole Gray. She was everywhere and nowhere, a blur of motion that left broken creatures in her wake. Her training, her modifications, everything she had ever been made to do, all of it came together in a display of violence that was almost beautiful. She did not think. She did not hesitate. She simply acted, her body and mind working as one perfect machine of destruction. And still, it was not enough that the Devourers kept coming. For every one that fell, two more took its place. The swarm was growing, drawn by the heat and energy of the living creatures trying to escape. The ground shook with the movement of something huge approaching from the depths. "We are not going to make it," Greg Porter said over the comm. He was firing steadily at the creatures pressing against their defensive line, but his voice was calm. He had accepted what was happening. There are too many of them. Nicole looked toward the landing craft. It was less than a kilometer away now. So close, so impossibly far. The aliens they had rescued huddled together in the center of the group, too terrified to do anything but follow where the humans led. And then the ground exploded. The creature that emerged was like nothing they had seen before. It was the size of a building, its body covered in plates of armor that looked like they had been forged in the heart of a volcano. Its head was a mass of sensing organs and grinding teeth. When it moved, the earth itself seemed to cry out in pain. This was the Alpha, the leader of the swarm, and it stood directly between them and escape. Nicole made her decision in an instant. She did not ask permission. She did not say goodbye. She simply started running toward the massive creature, leaving the others behind. "Nicole, what are you doing?" Greg shouted. "Getting you out of here. Do not stop. Do not look back. Just run." She hit the Alpha at full speed, her modified body striking its leg with enough force to crack the armored shell. The creature roared, a sound that shook the ruins around them, and turned its attention away from the fleeing survivors. What followed was less a fight and more a dance with death. Nicole used every trick she had ever learned, every technique she had been trained in, every enhancement that had been built into her body. She was faster than the Alpha, but it was stronger. She was smarter, but it was relentless. Every time she heard it, it adapted. Every time she found a weakness, it closed the gap. She lost track of time. She lost track of pain. She lost track of everything except the simple goal of keeping the monster focused on her while the others escaped. Behind her, Greg led the survivors toward the landing craft. He wanted to go back. Every instinct he had screamed at him to help Nicole. But he knew what she was doing. She was giving them a chance. The only chance they were going to get. "Move faster," he ordered. "Everyone on the ship, now." The aliens were loaded first, carried aboard by hands that had been trained to kill but were now working to save. Dr. Walsh counted heads as they passed, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. 412. They had to get all 412. Kyle Dunn was the last one aboard. He stood at the ramp, staring back at the distant battle where Nicole still fought. His face was unreadable. "She is not coming," Danny said quietly. He was covered in blood, most of it not his own. "She is buying us time. I know." The landing craft lifted off just as Nicole finally found what she was looking for. The Alpha had a cluster of nerves at the base of its skull, a weak point hidden beneath layers of armor. She had spent the entire fight working her way toward it, taking damage that would have killed any normal person 10 times over. Her blade, a weapon made of materials so advanced they did not have a proper name, slid through the armor and into the nerve cluster. The Alpha screamed and collapsed, its massive body crashing to the ground with enough force to shatter the ruins around it. The swarm hesitated. Without their leader, their coordination broke down. They still attacked, but their movements became random, unfocused. The unity that had made them unstoppable was gone. Nicole lay in the shadow of the fallen Alpha, too broken to move. She had 17 fractured bones. Her internal organs were failing. Burns covered most of her body. By any reasonable measure, she should already be dead. But she was smiling. She had done it. She had saved them. For the first time in her life, she had used everything she was to protect instead of destroy. And that was worth any price. The rescue team found her 3 hours later, after the swarm had scattered into the depths. She was still alive, barely, her enhanced body refusing to give up, even when everything else had failed. Dr. Walsh worked on her for 6 hours straight, using every technique and tool available to keep her heart beating. Nicole woke up 2 weeks later in the medical bay of the Valar. The first thing she saw was the face of an alien child, one of the survivors, watching her with huge, wondering eyes. "Why?" the child asked through the translator. "Why did you do that for us?" Nicole thought about the question. She thought about everything she had done, everything she had been, everything she had lost. And she thought about the cry for help that had traveled across 100 light years of empty space. "Because you asked," she said simply. We heard you." The Val returned to Earth 6 months later, carrying the survivors of a civilization that had nearly been destroyed. Humanity welcomed them with open arms, eager to learn from beings who had traveled the stars long before. Humans had left their own planet, but the real story was not about the aliens. It was about the monsters who had saved them, the killers who had chosen to become heroes, the weapons who had decided to protect instead of destroy. Nicole Gray received a full pardon, as promised. She could have disappeared, started over, become anyone she wanted. Instead, she helped create something new, a group dedicated to answering any cry for help that reached human ears. No matter how far away or how impossible the mission seemed, they called it the Response Corps. Its members were volunteers from every nation on Earth. trained and equipped to reach places no one else could reach. And leading them, serving as both a symbol and a warning, were the former prisoners of Black Vault 7. Nicole kept one thing from the mission: a small stone carved by alien hands, inscribed with words in a language that few humans could read. Translated, they said, "Those who came when we screamed into the darkness." She looked at it often, especially on the hard days. It reminded her of what she had learned, the lesson that had changed everything. Humanity was not defined by what it was capable of. It was defined by what it chose to do with that capability. And when the stars cried out for help, humanity had chosen to answer. That was what made them dangerous. That was what made them heroes. That was what made them human. And somewhere, in the infinite darkness between the stars, other civilizations were learning a new truth. If you needed help, if you were desperate, if you had nowhere else to turn, there was a species on a small blue planet that would come for you. All you had to do was ask.